Okay, so you ready to jump into this?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
I know a lot of you have been asking us to tackle this topic,
Yeah.
the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like it's such a sensitive and just like deeply complex issue.
It really is.
And I think it's one that, a lot of folks are just really looking for some guidance.
Yeah. And ways to even approach thinking about it.
Exactly. And you specifically wanted to explore this through, the lens of the Quran, right?
Perfect.
So that's what we're going to try to do today. We're going to take a look at, some of the verses that you sent us and some commentary that you've pulled together.
Okay.
And just kind of see what kind of guidance, if any, the Quran can offer on this really, really challenging topic.
It's really interesting because the Quran, it doesn't like explicitly lay out like this is how you deal with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Right.
But I think the principles that are in the Quran, they're sort of like they give us a direction to point in. Yeah.
Without necessarily giving us the map.
Okay.
So it's more like a compass, I would say,
I like that. Yeah.
than an actual roadmap.
A compass. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the first things that really jumps out, at least from the verses you sent over, is this idea of justice, right? Like a law,
Yes.
which is just so central to Islam as a whole.
It's a pillar.
Yeah, and like Surah An-Nisa, chapter 4, verse 135,
Right.
really calls for, standing firm in justice, being witnesses for justice.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you translate that into something like, this conflict that we're talking about, something so specific?
That's a really great question.
Yeah.
Because it can't just be sort of this nebulous idea of
Right.
justice floating around.
Not exactly.
You have to think about it in very concrete terms.
Yeah.
And so if we look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict through that very specific lens of justice,
Right.
what does a just solution actually entail for both sides?
Yeah. Does it entail, for example, a two-state solution?
Right.
Or does a truly just outcome require a totally different framework?
Okay.
These are the questions that this verse, I think, compels us to grapple with.
It's pushing us to not be satisfied with just,
The status quo.
status quo. Yeah. And like not just accepting
Yeah.
whatever's happening, but really like
Critically examining.
critically examining it. Yeah. And alongside that justice piece,
Yeah.
there's also this theme that runs through a lot of the verses of like compassion and mercy, right? Rahma. And like Surah Al-Anfal, chapter 8, verse 61.
Okay.
It says, and if they incline to peace, then incline to it too.
Right.
And it just feels like this invitation to choose like understanding and trying to de-escalate rather than, just constantly escalating.
And that's a really important point.
Yeah.
Because compassion, it doesn't mean ignoring the wrongs that have happened. It's actually about acknowledging those wrongs and creating a space where, even though there's been this pain and this resentment,
Yeah.
understanding can actually emerge.
Okay.
And there are, organizations out there that are doing this work.
Yeah.
There's groups that are bringing together Israeli and Palestinian youth, for dialogue and facilitating these conversations.
Wow.
Is that, for example, an instance of what the Quran is talking about? This idea of fostering compassion in a really difficult environment.
That's really powerful.
Yeah.
It's like planting seeds.
Yeah.
In a place where it seems like, it would be impossible for anything to grow.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think about, one of the other verses you sent, which was from Surah Ashura 42.41,
Yeah.
which talks about, those who defend themselves after being wronged.
Yeah.
And so like if we're talking about compassion,
Right.
how do we balance that with this idea that the Quran also recognizes that there is a right to resist oppression?
It's a really complex question
Yeah.
because, and I think this is something that we have to acknowledge up front.
Okay.
There are narratives of oppression on both sides
Right.
in this conflict, right?
Yeah.
And so what the Quran's condemnation of oppression, what it calls dulm,
Right.
it forces us to look at, okay, what are those historical and what are those ongoing injustices
Yeah.
that Palestinians have faced?
Right.
And to advocate for their rights and their security,
Yeah.
that is paramount.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we also need to ensure the security of Israelis.
Right.
And so the real challenge here is finding a path
Right.
that addresses both sides' legitimate concerns
Yeah.
while simultaneously dismantling systems of oppression wherever they exist.
It's not about
Yeah.
just choosing a side or simplifying something that's incredibly complex.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing the nuances and the fact that there are different truths.
And even amidst all of this, the idea of pursuing peace, salam.
Yes.
It's something that comes up again and again in the Quran.
Absolutely central.
Yeah, like Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, verse 208. It says, enter into peace completely.
Completely.
But how, after decades of conflict and just like so much pain,
right?
How do you actually get to that point?
Well, I think what's interesting is that the Quran doesn't just call for peace.
Yeah.
It calls for a lasting peace.
Okay.
And what that means is we can't just accept sort of Band-Aid solutions.
Right.
We have to go beyond that and think about, okay, what are the root causes of this conflict and how do we address those?
Yeah.
And so that involves diplomatic efforts. It involves negotiations based on mutual respect.
Yeah.
It involves a commitment to reconciliation.
Yeah.
A willingness to move beyond that cycle of violence.
It's about building something that lasts.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, like a foundation for a future where peace is not just like a ceasefire.
It's a lived reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And part of that building, it seems like, is rooted in this idea of unity, right? Ukhuwah.
Brotherhood, sisterhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like Surah Al-Hujurat, chapter 49, verse 10.
Okay.
It reminds us, the believers are but brothers.
Brothers and sisters.
Brothers and sisters, yeah. And I just keep coming back to like how powerful that message is.
I agree.
In this particular situation.
Because it reminds us that we share a common humanity.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. The political differences,
yeah.
the ideological differences, those are all secondary.
Yeah.
What matters is that we recognize our shared humanity.
Okay.
And so that means looking for common ground. It means building relationships, even if those relationships are just, small-scale collaborations or just, simple acts of kindness.
Yeah.
It's about taking those small steps towards that more unified future.
And it's that remembering our shared humanity that kind of leads us into, I think, one of the most challenging things to wrap our heads around, which is the idea of forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Yeah.
And Surah Ashura, chapter 42, verse 40, talks about this, overlooking wrongs.
Overlooking wrong.
And finding a way forward.
Right.
But, given all of the pain and the loss on both sides, is that even possible?
You've hit on the most difficult part of this.
Yeah.
Because forgiveness in the context of a conflict like this is incredibly difficult.
Right.
And it doesn't mean condoning what's happened. It doesn't mean forgetting what's happened.
Right.
It's about, I think what the Quran is trying to tell us is it's about choosing to break that cycle of retribution and instead to create a space for healing through dialogue and through understanding. And that path is a long one.
Right.
It's not an easy one.
Yeah.
But it's one that the Quran seems to be encouraging us to consider.
So we've looked at justice, compassion.
Yes.
This idea of resisting oppression, pursuing peace, this idea of unity, and even forgiveness. And I think it's important to point out, like, the Quran isn't giving us concrete answers here.
It's not a rule book.
No.
Yeah.
But these principles offer, like, this framework.
A framework.
For approaching something like this.
Right.
In a way that really, like, honors everyone's dignity and humanity.
I think that's a great way to put it, because it really is about recognizing that even amidst the conflict, there's a shared humanity there.
So I guess it leaves us with a pretty powerful question.
What's that?
Which is, if these principles were actively applied, how would the dynamics of this conflict actually shift?
That is the question.
Yeah.
That is the question. And it's one that I think is worth reflecting on.
Yeah.
As you continue to learn about this issue and engage with it.
Okay.
Because it's one that deserves our attention.
It really does.
And our careful consideration.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
For coming on and helping us.
It's been a pleasure.
Tackle this really tough topic.
Likewise, it's been great.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you all.
We'll catch you next time.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.